So I think we're live now.
Okay. So welcome everyone to this webinar sponsored by Verde Compacto. The topic is how to plan a successful vertical farming project. And this is organized with several folks who are here on this call. We have representatives from Contain, Cultivatd, myself, representing the Vertical Farming Podcast, and the folks from Verde Compacto as well. I'll be your host, and we want to give you an overview of, I disappeared. Okay, there we go. Yeah, we just want to give the audience an overview of information to consider when planning a successful project, a vertical farming project. And this is being recorded in case you're wondering. So for those that missed it, you'll be able to watch the recording afterwards. And if you have any questions, we can drop them into the chat. We have some that have been asked already ahead of time. And we want to make sure that we make this as interactive as possible. So again, if you have questions that come up, feel free to ask them in the chat. I do notice that, I don't know if it's my side that's a little slow and laggy, but we'll see how it goes. And we'll take it from there. So we have speakers covering three main topics. We're going to talk about the importance of farm planning and how to execute it, then understand how to find the right technology solution in indoor farming, and how Hubster can be a key element in your project. And then we'll close up by learning how to overcome the financial challenges for your project. And so each of the sections is going to be covered by the experts in the field in vertical farming. And the last portion of the webinar we'll save as a forum for you to answer any questions you have about vertical farming. And we encourage you to participate and ask your questions in the chat. So Verde Compacto, for those that don't know, their goal is with this webinar is to promote technology in agriculture and also explore the possibilities of indoor farming. So we're going to kick it off with Erica Parente. She's the Director of Farming as a Service for Cultivatd. She connects indoor farming clients with expert farmers to help them manage and operate their CEA facilities. Her expertise lies in resource management and internal operations developed through a career in IT consulting, government relations, and nonprofit organizations. Like so many, Erica's passion for sustainable food systems and innovative technology led her to join the indoor farming industry. So we'll kick it off to you, Erica, for the first section.
Thanks so much, Harry. Hello, everyone. I'm just about to, it says I can't share my screen while up.
I think you have to stop sharing, Harry.
Yep. Okay, we'll do that.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you, Harry.
That's okay.
All right. Go. Let me know if you can see that okay.
Yes.
Everyone's good? Okay, awesome. Thank you again, Harry, for the intro. Welcome, everyone. Super happy that you could all tune in tonight. As mentioned, my name is Erica Parente. I'm the Director of Farming as a Service for Cultivatd. And I'm really excited to have this conversation today. Planning is one of my favorite parts of vertical farming and just project management in general. Is really that pre-planning stage is something I'm really passionate about. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to talk to you about the importance of advisors. They really do play a key component in a vertical farming project, really in any project, no matter what industry you're in, but in particular with our vertical farming industry, because it is quite new and there's still a lot of nuances for a lot of people coming into this space. So with that, let's get right into it. So the key takeaways I'm hoping that you'll have today as an audience are to understand a bit more about who are advisors, when to engage them, the importance of them and working with them, finding the right advisors as well. It's a really key component too, and then how they can have continued support for your success. So with that, we'll move into who are advisors. Well, at the basic level, a person who provides expertise, commits their time, and/or presents connections to a startup company. It's usually the overall, broad definition that's used to describe an advisor. But I think if you were to look on the internet, for instance, you'd find that there's, a lot of different opinions about who advisors really are. Some would say that your mentors, maybe that, you've worked with in other capacities throughout your career, could turn into advisors as they make more of a commitment to you, as they show their value in your personal growth and developing out a plan or helping you troubleshoot different issues. So there's very much that component to mentorship that can lead to advisory. There's also our domain experts that often can become advisors or that we lean on and seek out in more of an advisor capacity. Those are going to be those people with really niche expertise. If you're looking to do a feasibility study, for instance, maybe you don't know have all of the answers. So going to a market research expert, for instance, would be a really good way to find an advisor with domain expertise. Then what I was reading the other day, I really love this, the name for this type of advisor. It's the Golden Nugget Advisor. And those are more your longer term relationships that you build with the person, or a company for that matter, can also be, company relations as an advisor. Who you keep over time. And those are the people who you send an email to with a really specific question when you really need some advice, or if you're going through an experience you've never had before, you need to troubleshoot an issue, you send them a quick email, and it's not going to take a ton of their time, but they give you those golden nugget pieces of advice that really do make a huge difference in your decision-making process and really help guide you to answers that maybe you wouldn't have come to your own conclusion on. So those are really some ways that I see advisors coming into play for businesses in the long term, if we were to categorize them. But I also threw up a few in here that I think are really, key, and that we'll go into as we go through the presentation. Family and friends with expertise at every component, I think that comes into play. So they're there definitely to support us with decisions. Personal and professional mentors, as I mentioned, experts within your network and your broader network. So those usually become, your principal advisors, those sorts of people who guide your management team or your CEO. And then you have your industry and product experts, which are your domain experts. End consumer is also up here. And I really always choose to include them as an advisor, because once you've gone to the execution phase of your project or your business for that matter, and you're in play, you're creating a product, how do you improve on that if you don't ask your clients and your buyers, your end consumer, as an advisor, and take their feedback really seriously and apply that to improve your product? So I always consider them an advisor in any situation. And lastly, I threw investors up here. This one's a bit controversial, which is why I love putting it up here, because you ask somebody and they may say, an investor makes the best advisor because, one, they have your best interest at heart and they have their own interests at heart. But they also usually come with tons of experience. They've been through it before with different companies, so they have lots of learnings that they can share with you. On the other side of that, they are an investor. So making money is their end goal. So that is always going to be in the back of their mind and at the forefront of their advisement. So I'll let you decide whether or not you choose to keep an investor as an advisor, but just wanted to put it up there because it is a very real potential advisor. So when to engage advisors? The short answer to this is at every stage of your project lifecycle. Now, up here, I have a graphic of a project lifecycle I've put together. This isn't your standard project lifecycle. Normally, you have a project lifecycle that, the first two, idea and initiating, education and planning, remain the same. But included in here is funding and execution. And that's because I'm looking at the framework of starting a vertical farming project as starting a vertical farming business. And that may be you're an existing farmer, maybe you're looking to incorporate vertical farming into your existing business. Either way, it's a new line of business that really needs to explore, and you're likely going to need to either allocate funding or seek funding for that. And then at the end, you have to actually execute and operate that farm. So this is how I've set it up, and we're going to walk through in the next phase of this, and next phase of the presentation, each phase of that project life cycle and how advisors can be brought in and how they can help support you through each phase of your project life cycle. All right, so engaging advisors at the idea and initiating stage. So this is the very first stage. Every idea for a business starts somewhere. So perhaps my new business idea is to supply fresh strawberries to my local community here in Ontario, Canada, where I'm based. And that's my initial idea. Now, at that point, I'm not going to have necessarily that much advisement. It's my idea. Maybe I circulate it a little bit amongst my closest family or friends. But in order to really validate that idea, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to go to the farmer's market. I'm going to start looking at, what does the product look like? Is it good quality? What's the prices of it? Is there a lot of supply? These first things are going to help me evaluate whether or not my idea of growing fresh strawberries in my small community is even needed. If, for instance, I see that the quality is not great, there's actually not very many supplies, especially in the winter time, Maybe this is something to explore. So that's what leads us to initiate our first consumer set of research. And that's where we have our family and friends that come in as our first level of advisement, where you have an idea, it goes a little bit farther beyond the idea stage. Now you have a bit more data to back up your idea. And you're going to your close family and friends, and they're really going to hopefully be honest with you and tell you it's a great idea, I love it, I would consume it. But you also have to ask them those tough questions. What about hydroponically grown strawberries? Does that change it for you? Is that, a turn on? Is that a turn off? Do you know what that is? How do you kind of figure out those questions you need to ask to address the end consumer? So really at the basic level, those people who are around you are going to be a potential product consumer. And so asking them initially is a really great place to understand where you need to start your research and where you may need to tag in an advisor down the line. So from there, I would go into tapping into my current broader network. So I have these questions that I've talked to about my friends and family. They've brought up a lot of new ideas that I need to investigate. And so I'm going to start looking and exploring who in my current network do I know that maybe works in the food industry, is a farmer, works in indoor farming in particular, if that's the avenue I'm looking at going down. And how can I tap into academic research, existing resources out there to answer some of those initial questions I have before I really dive into the planning and education stage. So you'll see throughout the presentation, I have these little icons here. The person represents an advisor that you may choose to bring in. And I also have the Cultivatd logo because Cultivatd, we do see ourselves as advisors and help support our clients from the early stages of their business idea. So for us, at this point where you would tap into your broader network, we really try to supply lots of content and different resources for our clients and new farmers coming in so that they feel prepared to either make that move into the industry or maybe explore some other options, whether it's greenhouses versus vertical farming. So that's why you'll see those icons throughout. It's just a reminder that that's where maybe you want to cue into an advisor. So the education and planning piece, definitely my favorite part of any project. And it really starts off with a good feasibility study. So that is really diving deep into your product, into your market research, your location you're thinking about. Maybe I'm looking at my small local community, but if the population isn't growing in that community, maybe it's declining. That's a huge indicator for me of my long-term growth and my long-term potential success in that community. So things like that maybe we don't think about at the very forefront of our idea or of our research. Looking at things in a really deep capacity is absolutely required in order to build a strong foundation to do business planning, seeking funding, and then of course have a strong execution. So at this point, feasibility studies are a ton of work. They often take a ton of time as well and require a lot of research as well and access to different types of data and statistics and all of these sorts of things. So this is a perfect opportunity to engage an advisor. You may not have the background to do a feasibility study, and bringing in a market research analyst, for instance, or another type of product expert might be a really key time to make sure that you're set up for success when you move along the process of your project lifecycle. Technology options are another key component here, and they do somewhat go simultaneously with the feasibility study. Sometimes people do the feasibility study will advise and provide some answers to what technology they should be looking for. But at this point, you really want to look at, okay, you've identified your market and the space in your market, who potentially your target audience is. Now we need to look at production costs, yield outputs, all of these sorts of things, and make sure you're matching that with what your market is in need of, right? So it's very much you need to align that technology, what it's capable of, what its operational capacity is, the costs associated with it, to what your end consumer is looking for and what you're hoping to achieve through your business vision, whether that's scaling or staying small, a small commercial facility. So this is where you definitely bring an advisor in if you're feeling overwhelmed about all of the different technologies. Right now, the industry is full of incredible tech, and sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to understand which ones make the most sense. So having an unbiased advisor at this point to really recommend the technology is super key. You want to see the honest comparison, yield outputs compared to the electricity expenses and consumption for that technology. So really having an unbiased opinion to show that to you and allow you to make the decision that is best for your company is really, really key. And that is where Cultivatd excels. That's what we really, our bread and butter is to do that. Present an unbiased recommendation of different technologies based on your business plan. And then of course we have the business planning. So the previous two steps, feasibility study, looking at different technology options, will undoubtedly inform your business plan. And some people, if you ask them, say business plans are a waste of time. A year from when you create them, they just might be. They just might seem that way. But I'm a firm believer in the business plan because I think there's nothing that can steer you wrong if you have a north light, if you see that North Star and this is what you intended a year ago or 6 months ago, if you can go back to that, look at what your sales strategy was. What was your marketing strategy? How did you anticipate to get your product to market? All of those things that you had to think about in order to complete this exercise is so key in being able to see where you've moved, how much growth you've had as a company or individually, to see where your knowledge has improved, all of these things. So for me, it's a really key component. It's also a major component for funding, especially if you wanted to seek any government funding, loans. A lot of time investors, independent investors are also looking for that. So it's a really important exercise. And of course, you're not expected to know how to do all of that on your own. And that's why an advisor is really, really important. Either advisors that you've already engaged at this point, because you probably have somebody you've been working with, or a feasibility study, or on the technology side, that you can also go back to ask to review your business plan, or maybe to provide some insights on things maybe you have overlooked. So it's always nice to have somebody to refer back to when you have some questions around that. Now, funding avenues. So funding avenues, if you're looking at the literature, is probably where an advisor proves their most value. Maybe that's debatable, because I think it's really valuable to get you to that point to work with an advisor. But where the more focus in the literature is showing that the value is really when it comes to funding. And you have to navigate and understand a little bit more about which funding options are best for you, because if you're going the government route and looking for government loans or grants, you're probably going to seek a different advisor than if you were going to venture capital, for instance. And I was recently reading a study actually that explored whether or not an advisor's value-added contribution is statistically significant for early stage companies who are seeking venture capital in particular. And I found the results were really, really interesting, because they indicated that value add is statistically significant. Sorry, it's always a tongue twister saying that 10 times fast. It's statistically significant for entrepreneurs with more innovative products compared to those with, maybe a little bit more of a traditional product. And that an involvement from an advisor at that stage will actually help improve their chances of getting funding from a venture capitalist. So I think when we think about vertical farming, for us that are in the industry, it doesn't always seem like that novel of an idea. We're in it every day. But when you look to the outside world, if you're looking to get funding from a venture capitalist who doesn't have really that much experience investing in projects like this, having an advisor to advocate for you, to show them that, this novel idea has been tested in these different ways, it's failed in these certain ways, this is how we're going to plan to overcome those challenges, and to really advocate for you can really benefit their decision and your likelihood of getting funded. So that's a really key thing. And as we go into the next slide here around funding, once you have an advisor chosen for the funding stage, they really should help prepare you to go through this process and make it a little bit more seamless. So the real value add here is that they can help you prepare materials for your pitch, also prepare you for meetings with venture capitalists, explain the investment practices that are, you're expected to know going into those types of conversations, and how the process works after you've gone through due diligence, all of these things. And really, they should also be able to help assist in selecting the most suitable venture capital fund, if that's the route you're going, for your business. And lastly, and maybe one of the most important pieces, is that they should also be able to help your bargaining position, getting you, the best terms of the deal for you, and making sure that they warn you of any other, terms that maybe aren't in your best interest. And they also help you oftentimes improve your valuation, which is super important. So we've seen in the literature that there's a lot of support for how advisors can support specifically to venture capital, if that's the route you're going. But I would also say, if you're looking at government funding and that sort of thing, navigating that can be quite complex as well, even just with the timelines, or, what's required to be considered. So working with an advisor in that capacity, I'm just looking at obviously those two streams right now very generally, but an advisor can always help you to make those decisions. There was actually another survey based on business startups in Japan. And it was said that 68.5% of the entrepreneurs who were surveyed actually said that funding was their highest anxiety. They had the most anxiety around funding. And so even working with an advisor, if it can help alleviate half of that anxiety or all of that anxiety, in my opinion, that's so much worth working with an advisor. So just something to keep in mind as we go out. There's value adds in different ways beyond just improving your valuation. That's a big one. So the last piece of the project lifecycle is execution. This is when you have secured your funds, you are ready to go. At this point, you probably have your team lined up, at least your senior management team. You know who you want to hire, you have already hired them, and you're really looking to execute efficiently. So they know their jobs, they have their goals in place, and you're really ready to go. That's not to say that advisory stops at the execution stage. In fact, you probably are at this point either leaning more heavily on your advisors than you ever have, or you're seeking new advisors to fill in gaps that you yourself are realizing you have in your skill set or your knowledge set, or that your team is maybe missing or lacking, that you don't necessarily know of anybody to come on in a full-time capacity to take on that specific gap. So right now, hiring that team is super important in order for you to execute on your vertical farming project, whether that's operations. Again, Cultivatd comes into play. We help support companies in operations as well as their internal policies, SOPs, and all of those things. So that's a huge component. If you don't know the industry well, or you haven't started a vertical farm before, making sure you have the right advisors to help support you in that capacity can make so much difference down the line, and making sure that you can grow quickly if that's your goal and intent is to scale. The other thing to think about is management. And management is a tricky one because you can have a great entrepreneur, but they're not always the greatest leader. And leadership can often make or break a company. Well, one of the other things is interesting is management styles and whether or not you have an active or passive management style. I was reading an experiment, a field experiment that took place in India, and it actually lined up peers in an industry. And the peers, one peer was seeking advice from its other peer. And the study basically matched up people with passive management styles and active management styles. It was interesting that 2 years later, those entrepreneurs who were lined up with peers with active management style were actually 28% larger companies, and they were 10% less likely to fail. So it's just like goes to show in such a small, I think there was over 150 entrepreneurs involved in that study. It just goes to show you the impact that somebody can have on you when they're sharing those types of styles and encouraging you to try something or to not try something. It's always good to keep in mind where you may need advising down the line, not just in the pre-planning stage, but in execution as well. And again, you're setting goals and tracking your progress and enforcing accountability, that's continuous throughout your business, throughout any project that you may develop while you're going through the process of starting your company, working on new things, taking on new ventures. Tracking and enforcing accountability is really important. And I think sometimes it can be often overlooked. And one of the things is making sure that you have the tools and the structure in place to hold yourself accountable and hold your team accountable. And sometimes it's a really good place to bring an advisor for an external perspective as well. If you've been in it for a while and you haven't had those tools in place or those systems in place, an external perspective from one of your advisors, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's an indirect competitor who you've started to really talk to a lot more regularly, who can support you and provide some insights. So really at every level of the project life cycle is when you need to really lean on some sort of advisory. Just wanted to end that piece of the presentation by saying that it's not the genius at the top giving directions that makes people great. It is a great people that make the guy at the top look like a genius. This is really just to say that you may surround yourselves with incredible advisors. In the end, the decision is yours. Who you choose to listen to, what decisions you choose to make based on their advice or not is up to you. Nobody should take an advisor and listen to everything they do and execute specifically to how they say it. It's really to encourage you to think about things differently, strategically, ask the difficult questions so that you can respond accordingly based on their guidance and their support ultimately. And with that, finding the right advisors also comes to mind because sure, we've talked about who, we've talked about how they're important and why we should be working with them, but where we find them and how we approach them can also be a bit of a challenge. So there's just a few key points in here. We've gone through who, but the where is often industry networking events, warm introductions through your network. That is probably one of the best ways to really find an advisor is through somebody you know in the industry. It could be a friend of a friend, it could be a colleague of a friend, it could be any of these types of people who are able to give you a warm introduction. It's a really key way of meeting different advisors. LinkedIn and Twitter for your domain experts. Great resources to really see what they're talking about, how they're engaging with other companies, and also vetting their expertise as well. And then lastly, those advisors that we're looking for are really those people who have the direct experience, who have built something similar to what you're trying to build, or they have experienced both success and failure in trying to do that. So exploring different options, even small business development centers in your local region, often independent but associated with different government agencies are a really great place to start to look for advisors. There's also a lot of entrepreneurial incubators and accelerators that have advisors that they match up with you that also can be great recommendations, or they can recommend externally as well that make great advisors too. And how you approach advisors is really dependent on your personality, how you operate in the business world, but it really comes down to getting out there and talking to people, whether that's on LinkedIn, if you're not able to go in person to networking events, things like that, or through warm introductions through your existing network, reaching out to people, but asking them the right questions as well. Don't be afraid to ask them what their experience is in working with this type of company or within this industry, and putting the feelers out there about some of the struggles you're experiencing and getting their off the cuff response and how they would manage it is a really good first indication of whether or not they'd be a good fit for you and your company. And we also want to keep in mind that personal rapport is also a huge component of this. If you have a mentor that you've worked with for a really long time that you get along great with, and they provide really valuable insights, there's no reason to seek another advisor if they provide what you have, what you're looking for, if they have what you're looking for. So rapport is really important, making sure you have that personal connection, because if you don't, there's no way you're going to go to them and be honest about a struggle you're experiencing, or seek their advice for, something that may be a little bit embarrassing that you don't have the skill set for. So an advisor should be really somebody you can depend on for support, no matter what you're looking or what you're facing. And with that, really your advisor should be there for your continued success. So throughout every stage of your project or every stage of your business development up until execution and then after, really lean on your advisors, and they may stay the same. They may be short-term agreements or short-term relationships if it's domain experts and you've already gained all the knowledge you need from them. Don't be afraid to say goodbye to those advisors either, and seek new advisors to help you fill the knowledge gaps that you may have or may be experiencing at the execution stage. But don't forget to also hold on to those advisors that you really do feel like bring a lot of value to you personally and to your team overall. And with that, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity. And I think we're saving questions to the end, but feel free to pop them in the chat now while they're fresh in your mind. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Erica. Lots to digest there. Juan, can you see my screen? I should have the, if not, I can reshare. Can you see, can you guys see Juan's lovely face on the screen again?
Yes, I see it.
Yeah, Erica, thank you so much. Lots to cover there. And I think what the takeaway is this really the idea of planning and really doing your homework and building in enough lead time, because I think, people get excited at the idea of starting a farm and jumping right in. And, with what you've outlined there, I would imagine for anyone who's serious about taking this on, there's probably a lot of bullet points that they haven't been thinking about. And so just one thought from you, and obviously we can go deeper in the Q&A, but when you think about like a timeline in planning, and let's say it's right now, it's end of November 2022, realistically, like, does it make sense for me to think that I could realistically open up a container farm in July of 2023? Or do I need to think about like maybe a year, or just, with all the moving parts? It's interesting, obviously with Cultivatd's experience in the size of projects you've been working on. And I know Juan might have some feedback on this as well.
Yeah, it's a great question because timelines can be so dependent on so many different variables. If your supply chain is in order and you can get the product delivered quickly, and it's really just dependent on you as an entrepreneur getting your stuff in order and making sure you have, a strong business plan and all of these things. The first phase of that, the planning, the initiating idea phase to the planning phase to when you're ready to fundraise, I'd say is probably not going to take as long, the initial phase. The fundraising piece, I think, is often the tricky part that can be really dependent. If you're going to bootstrap it yourselves and you're ready to go, it might be very valuable for you to be able to start that company in July if you're really going to put 100% of your effort into it and be full-time dedicated. But for those people who, are doing this more on the side, they have full-time jobs, maybe they don't have experience with fundraising and they're on that journey for the first time. Even with advisors, it can be a bit of a longer journey, I would say. So all of those variables depend, but if you have the funds and if you have the momentum as an entrepreneur to get it done, then yeah, it can happen. It's really situationally dependent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think those slides are going to be helpful for folks who are digging into the specifics. So we'll make sure those are available for the listeners as well. So thank you for that, Erica. Our next speaker is Juan Gabriel Sucar. He is the founder and co-CEO of Verde Compacto. He graduated as a senior business manager in the agro industry. And according to Modar Intelligence, Verde Compacto is the leading indoor vertical farming company in Mexico. Since 2016, they've been designing and developing indoor vertical farms and are transforming the way we grow and consume our food with a sustainable impact worldwide. Verde Compacto is one of the 3 winning companies of the Heineken Green Challenge and the top 20 companies that are saving the planet, as identified by Entrepreneur Mexico magazine. Juan is the mission to motivate more people to develop sustainable businesses that can improve the world for us and the population of the future. Thank you, Juan, for coordinating this event, and I'm looking forward to you sharing your thoughts in this section as well.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for the introduction. I'll share my screen now. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. So can you see my screen, everyone? Yeah.
I can, yes.
Oh, great. So hello, everyone.
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Buenas noches a todos. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight. And of course, we are very happy to host this type of events and bring high and top leaders in the industry. As tonight we have Erica and Doug, and that have a lot of valuable content to share with you guys. And I hope also this presentation can help you understand a little bit deeper on the technology side of things on vertical farming, which is one of the key ingredients of having a successful project. Not the only one, but it's a very important choice once you enter this industry. So my main goal tonight is to give you a snapshot on the Hubster and the technology we've developed in Verde Compacto and how we help our clients and our projects use it in the most successful way. And just a small background and a small introduction. Well, vertical farming is a very important industry that has been growing a lot in the past years. A lot of new companies have been popping up, a lot of new players have been joining this industry, and a lot of investments are being made. And basically, this is because there's a need to change our actual food supply chain, because today an average of 50% of the global greenhouse emissions are generated by our food supply system. There's an excessive use of water. There's a very extensive supply chain. A lot of the product that is grown in Mexico is consumed in Japan, in Canada, in Europe. So it travels a lot of distance. And together with this idea is that the global population is growing exponentially. So we are going to be more or less 30% more people in the next 20 to 30 years. So imagine if today we are having issues and a lot of challenges feeding the global population. So imagine how we're going to do and how we're going to manage to feed the future population of the planet. And that's why Singularity University quotes that by 2026, indoor vertical farming will be the basis of the production of the vegetables that will be consumed in large cities around the world. To make that, because vertical farming is transforming the way we are growing and consuming our food today. And so that's just a small introduction. And well, how is vertical farming growing? Of course, when we talk about vertical farming, it's a very extended subject, and vertical farming can be implemented in many different ways, from a small hydroponic project in your house to very large scale projects. But tonight I want to focus more on commercial production of vertical farming. And talking about it, we have and the most popular technologies and systems that are being installed and built around the world are we can divide it into these two groups. The first one we call it the giga farms, because they are these massive farms installed in large warehouses at the outside of large cities around the world. As you know, these have been a lot of famous companies are based within this concept of giga farms. Aerofarms, Plenty, Carella, a lot of companies. Of course, this has its pros and cons. This gives us a lot and allows us to grow massive production in one centralized place. But this can be a very complex operations if we don't have high levels of automation, and of course delivery and delivery to the final consumers. That is why a lot of companies that are based with giga farms, they tend to make partnerships with large retailers, so it can ease operations and deliveries. And of course, to plan and execute this type of systems, this type of farms, a lot of capital is needed, a lot of investments are needed to be made, and it's very capital intensive to start, grow, and expand the business. So that's why there's just a small, there's not a lot of companies that are being built this way. but of course, every day they're getting more popular. The other side of the coin are the container farms, and that's our specialty, and where we develop our technology. And container farms is a very interesting technological solution, because this can help us localize our production. For example, in food deserts, where the supply chain is very complex. For example, in Canada, in the Yukon, or in Montana, or in the deserts, for example, Arizona, or the north of Mexico. With the container farms, it's very easy to install and deploy a food production system anywhere in the world, basically. Or not only in food deserts, we can also put them in the downtowns, and in the center of large cities, and that way we can harvest and deliver the product the same day that it was harvested. Also, these container farms helps us grow in a modular way, and basically help grow the business as sales and as you get ongoing on your project. And also, this modular growth helps us specialize our production into different models. For example, right now, mushrooms are getting very popular, so we can get especially designed farms for mushrooms, specially designed farms for leafy greens, for microgreens, and that way we can specialize the environment and nutrition on each of our models in a more controlled way. So that's the difference on both of the projects. And of course, starting as Erica was saying, starting a vertical farming business is complex. We need to consider a lot of things. Well, of course, starting with container farms is an easy way to start, because it's a turnkey way to start things. And as us being a technology supplier, of course, as backing up with Erica's comments, we before every project and all the projects that we work with, we always recommend them to take a close look to these three key ingredients to in their projects. Because these really make the difference on having a successful project on vertical farming and not having a successful project. And of course, everybody in this industry are aiming to build successful success stories. So everybody, new people can come in, and we can keep the investment going. But the three main key ingredients for you guys that are looking to start or are already in the business, first is to have to choose the right technology in your business, because technology can make the difference onto having a lower payback time, onto having higher yields, and to have operational efficiencies. So we always recommend to find and to look for the most productive farms that you can find at the lower investment needed, so that way you can accelerate your payback time. Of course, it won't pay itself, right? So it's very important to have access to added value markets for the crops. This is where a lot of projects start to slow down, because we need to understand that the product that is grown in the vertical farm is premium quality product, and we need to market it and sell it that way in order to make it in order to have interesting financial returns. So that is very important. For example, to access from supermarket retailers and have a differentiator in your marketing and branding, to restaurants and the final consumer as well. And of course, the third key ingredient is capital, the capital and fundraising, and that's Erica already said a lot about it. And of course, Doug is going to extend himself on this matter. But these three key ingredients are key in order to start and grow in this industry. And of course, we focus on number one. And that's why since we started Verde Compacto in 2016, our mission has always been making vertical farming more accessible for new people to enter this industry, or companies to diversify into this industry and help them grow, so we can transform this food supply chain we were talking about a minute ago. So that's basically how our R&D and our efforts are located. And to do this and to make vertical farming more accessible, we've been designing the Hopster, and the Hopster has been designed just for that, to have a high yield container farm, but lowering the capital investment needed to start and grow the business. And the Hopster is basically a vertical hydroponic farm built inside a 40-footer shipping container, reefer container, so it's isolated, and with levels of automation and nutrient and environment control. So in the Hopster, for example, this 40-foot container that it's probably 320 square feet or 35 square meters, you can grow the same amount of, or you can have the same yield as an acre or as a 5,000 square meters per year. So this is, as you see, this is a high productive, or it has a lot of production in just a one small space. So that allows us to have at least with one container farm, it helps you to start a pilot business to then scale it up with more units or with larger facility. Also, the Hopster, as I was saying, it's a smart farm where we control the environment, such as temperature, humidity, CO2, LED, airflow, ventilation, irrigation systems, and of course the nutrition of the plants. So that way we can grow anywhere in the world, any time of the year, and of course simplify the operations and to make it more accessible for people maybe that are not specialized on farming. This way we can ease some activities for them to make it simpler, more simple. The Hopster, as the container farms are designed, it helps a lot to create now these farm to table supply chains. So this now is for example, we've worked with projects that are, for example, in the Pacific Islands, where they depend on very complex logistic supply chains. So now with this type of containers, you can basically place them anywhere. It's not a lot of space, and this way we can harvest and consume the same product at the same time in a restaurant, in a hotel, in a community. And of course, this has to be a business. At the end, we are all investing on this to make some business and to grow. And of course, it's also designed to be profitable. So we have high yields, low capital investment needed, and that way we can get a great profitability rates. As I was saying, here you can see in more detail how the Hopster works. You have everything that you need in a farm inside the box. So basically, in where you see the number 1, 2, and 3, that's the germination area. So it's designed for you to have from a seed planted there to the packaging made there. So everything happens in the same box. So number 3, as you can see, that's the germination area. Number 2 is your nutrient control systems. Number 1, you can see there an air curtain to protect ourselves, the inside environment from the outside environment, and keep our plants protected. And in the left side of the farm, we have the growth units. As you can see, we use vertical growing towers, and in the middle of the growing towers, we place the LED lights. This is a very special configuration we use in the Hopster. We are very familiar on finding in the container farms these vertical walls. Well, we transform that, and we call them we transform that into growing islands, as we say. This allows us to have more yields in the same space, to use more efficiently the space, and get more efficiency on our lighting, because we can get light to cover all the plant. It's not direct light. You can get light all over the plant. And in this specific model of the Hopster, well, it's basically designed to grow all type of leafy greens, all type of herbs, aromatics, some types of small roots, edible flowers, microgreens, etc. You can be able to grow over 200 varieties of vegetables in the same farm. Yeah, you can combine crops in the same farm to grow like an interesting box of vegetables. And And what makes us different? Because outside, there are plenty of container farming companies that are offering their solutions. With Cultivatd, you can find a whole bunch of options. And of course, everyone has his pros and cons. What here in Hubster and Verde Compacto makes us different is, as I was saying, we are our technology is designed to have higher efficiencies on payback times, increasing productivity, decreasing capital investment needed to start and grow. The second differentiator and where we try to make a lot of effort in is in the post sale, because as Erica was saying, you can make a great planning before you start your farm, but if you have a good execution, the project can fail. So, and we understand that the first year of operations of any project is crucial. And for example, in every project, we are backing up our farmers for a year remotely. Also, we try to build a close relationship with our farmers because at the end, we believe that their success is our success, and every single farm deployed is a promoter for our company, and that way we can both sides win. The third differentiator, as we started as an R&D company, we are flexible within our farm designs. I'll explain a little bit more detail in a minute. But we don't have like standard design. We can be flexible on make specific customizations depending on every project needs. Sometimes in some other corporate projects, we also offer services, farming as service for people that are companies that might not be familiar on operating a vertical farm. And also we have designed our own environment control system. That way we can even give better support, because we can have all access to the information that is happening on your farm real time, remotely, and give you real time feedback on how to make things more efficiently. We work with different type of projects. I'll talk about three type of projects that we work with. The first type of project we work with is vertical farmers. And here is a couple of challenges we've seen with vertical farmers and how we are helping them with our technology and our support. Is first, as we were saying, vertical farming is a high investment market. And with this type of technology, we are giving access to more people to join into this industry. Second, we've seen a lot of established vertical farmers that they acquire a couple of farms, but since they now have 5-10 units already working, they have some specific needs to increase to ease their operations and also to make efficiencies on their operations. And that's where a customization becomes a very powerful tool, as I was saying before. So for example, we've customized farms to take away the germination area for the established farmers, because that germination area it's already done within other units. So that way we can increase profitability in their farms, or making other adjustments for specifically for specific locations, for example, for extreme cold conditions or for extreme hot conditions. So that's a very, very powerful tool for vertical farmers that already know what they need. And we've also seen with established vertical farmers that it's very difficult for them on finding the right technical partner. We've seen a lot of these operations that they cannot find, for example, the right replacement of LEDs or the right replacement of sensors because they don't have the right backup from their original suppliers, and that's where we come in as well. We've helped vertical farmers that don't necessarily have or Hubster installed, but we have already give them some feedback on how to replace some technical and some technology within their actual operation, and that way we start a relationship that helps us grow. So this is a little bit on established vertical farmers. Also, we've worked with large-scale corporations, more like supermarkets and food service companies, where they have very expensive and complicated logistic chains, and of course, centralizing the operation within, for example, their logistic warehouse. That way, they can harvest the plant, and the same day they will deliver it. and they don't have to make a long trip, and they don't have to invest in a very a complex cold chain. And with these large corporations, we integrate different models. As you can see here in this render, we can use different type of farms, all centralized in a packaging area. That basically the plant is harvested, packaged, and delivered to the supermarket the same day. This type of corporate farms, their business is not mainly to operate their vertical farms, or they might not have the expertise on that, and that's where our farming as a service comes in. So they own the farm and they own the crops, but we harvest, we operate, and we deliver in the same place where it's being consumed. And they can grow modular. For example, it's very different to start an investment of $200 million to validate if the product is going to work, and compared to an investment on $300,000. So this way, these large corporations can start growing modular, validate products, yields, prices, and whatever, and increase their operations. And lastly, of course, this is one of the biggest markets, new vertical farmers. There's a lot of people that want to join this industry that they don't have the right guidance. That's where Cultivatd comes in. I really recommend you to reach Cultivatd for the right guidance on your project. And there we find that people stop because they find very expensive solutions, so they don't have the means to buy them. So this technology helps them enter easily and faster. We found that they don't have a lot of experience into farming, and that's why, as I was mentioning before, we give full support to the growing team. We give them 1 year of remote and technical support. We give them on-site training. We give them all the right materials so they can become experts on their operations. And if sometimes they're not sure how to start, they're not sure how to start, and that's why we have partners like Cultivatd, so that they can teach them and teach them how to start. And lastly, of course, we every project that comes in, before we even give the green light to sell the product or the hopster to them, we always try to look for the project validation. So we want to make sure that the project is going to succeed. Because we want to have success cases, success stories, and that's why for us, stage number one in every project is key. And for every project that comes in, we like to advise them. We like to see what's the business model going to look like, to make some projections on their costs, electricity, expensive yields, etc., so they can make a right investment. Of course, they invest in the project. We build our farms in Mexico, and we can deliver them worldwide. And the third thing is post-sale that I already talked about. So that's basically how we work. And this was just a very, very fast snapshot on Hopster, Verde Compacto. And of course, if you have any question, you want to start a project, you don't know how to, and you're trying to look for the right technical solution, you can always contact us, and we can help you with the right decisions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan. That was very insightful. I think, again, sort of a nice follow-up to Erica's presentation, because it basically shows anyone who's interested, the specifics and the logistics. When you can see the farm in action, when you can see what the inside would look like, you start to get excited about the possibilities and thinking about, you can almost envision, day in, day out, working that farm, and getting your hands on the crop, and putting people that are watching or that are listening are going to watch the replay thinking about, like, wow, just even imagining like who they could be selling to, and just envisioning like who they could partner with, or where in the world they could see one of these hopsters being located. And I think it's exciting for people. Just maybe one question for you: when you think about the logistics and the planning, is there like one thing people, not necessarily a mistake, but sometimes they overlook in the planning process, that based on the experiences you've had with installations, it's something people should be considering?
Yes, I think people first. I think the first thing, right? It has to do what you were saying. People get really excited on when they start a project, and they underestimate, for example, their final market, and how their final buyer is going to look like, and how are they going to market their product, and how are they going to deliver it, and how are they going to pack it. So that's one way. That's why having the right customers and maybe a pre-validation before you start is key when you start. And second is the starting curve. Everybody thinks that the container farm, once you plug it into the lights and the water, is going to magically grow all of your crops. But of course, there's a like putting into in Spanish we say I'm not sure if it's the right translation, but putting it to the point, to the performance point. So it takes time to get it into that sweet spot of productivity. It can take 4 to 6 months. Getting your cycles right, getting your yields right, getting your nutrition right. So that's one thing people underestimate, and it's very important for them to consider it as well.
Yeah, I think it's not it's not the glamorous, everything is automatic. You just turn on the switch and everything happens. And I think there is farming involved. You have to tend to the crops. You have to see what's working, what's not working, what's growing, and how the environment is affecting your ability to grow. And then, you'll have some challenges later in terms of marketing, but that's separate. But I think, you should be in this for the long term, and you should be also willing to know what it is you don't know, and be open to learning. And I'm sure that's part of the support that you provide as well, because there's some folks coming into this space new as well. So they need a lot of handholding in those early months.
Correct.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you everyone for sticking around. I know it's a little bit late depending on where you are, but we're in the home stretch here. We've got one more presentation here, and I'll share.
Doug is your guy to start. He's the one you have to listen to.
Yeah. We save the best for last. We've got Doug Harding coming up. He is the founder and CCO of Contain. He lives and works out of Reno, Nevada, and has more than 6 years of experience in the indoor ag space, and is the director of finance and vendor relations for Contain. For those of you that don't know, Contain is an indoor ag tech, fintech platform helping to facilitate the indoor ag industry. Doug has more than 35 years of consumer and commercial lending experience, a degree in finance from San Diego State, and a master's degree in finance from the University of Houston. He loves boating and hiking at Lake Tahoe. And even more, he loves helping customers and vendors with financing projects in our space. Really excited, and a nice way to tie this all together, because obviously the financing is a key component to what we're trying to accomplish here. So we'll let Doug take us home.
Thanks, Harry. I appreciate that introduction. Let me see if I can share a screen here.
And while Doug is setting that up, we've had Nicola, the CEO of Contain, on the Vertical Farming podcast. Juan himself has been on the podcast as well. I'll make sure to drop those links if you guys want to hear their stories. But very, very happy to be partnering with Contain on this project.
I appreciate you saying that, and that's a good transition for me, Harry. So Nicola Kerslake, our CEO, is very well known in this industry. Some of us before this webinar, we were talking about Indoor AgCon. Nicola actually was the founder of Indoor AgCon, and the reason that she decided to do that is she had such an interest in the industry and wanted to learn more, and she couldn't think of a better way to learn more than an events business. And for those of you that know Indoor AgCon, it's one of the largest events in our industry right now. And although she's glad to be out of those headaches of that particular business, it sure gave us a lot of insight and information. And what it really made us realize is how important financing is for this industry. It's very capital intensive. And I don't care if it's a startup company that's looking at a $150,000 container or $20 million project. Financing is everything. and both Erica and Juan have touched on that. So I love following the advisory and technology part of this webinar. And again, Juan, I appreciate the invitation. So a little more about Contain, and I'm going to go through this fast because I think we're kind of running behind, and I want to make sure that we have time for some questions. But as Harry mentioned, Contain is an indoor ag fintech platform. We do several different things. Our main event is to provide financing for these different projects, all different sizes, all different types of projects, all different geographies. We've been doing this now for, again, about 7 years. I've been with the company for about 6 years. And it's a challenge because this is still a newer industry, even though some of us have been in this industry for a while. Sounds like, it should be stable. That's not how industries work. And there's challenges with newer industries, as we see in the finance aspect of it. So our mission is to bring easier and faster financing to the controlled environment, agriculture, vertical farming space. And we've done that by, over the years, aligning ourselves with now more than 30 different lenders in the space that actually have interest and desire to lend in the industry. In many cases, we've helped provide data, which we've accumulated over the years. We've helped educate some of them. And the common denominator is that they're interested in lending in this space. And that sounds like a simple statement, but I'm telling you, and most of you probably already know this, the average lender is not interested in lending in this space. They're still kind of sitting on the sidelines and waiting to see what happens. So we've kind of taken the initiative to help facilitate the industry. In that regard, there's a number of ways that we feel like we're helping facilitate the industry. So again, our main event is the finance aspect, and I'm going to get into more of that detail momentarily. But we have two other platforms that we've initiated also that are extremely relevant. The first one is Equipped, which is a used equipment selling platform. One of the things that's missing when it comes to financing in this industry is there's not really an established secondary market. And that's relevant to lenders because if they lend on something, they want to know what that asset may be worth 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So that's important. I'll go into a little more detail on the next slide. We also have a micro learning platform called Rooted that we're real excited about. We think, and again, we're facilitators of this industry like Cultivatd is and like Verde Compacto is, and many others, but we think that education is very important to this industry. And Rooted is that learning platform that's kind of turned into a corporate wellness program where we actually teach people about the industry, how to grow indoors on a small scale. We're fortunate to have some big sponsors like Google, Dole, and Danone that actually give us access to their employees, where we can actually send them an indoor grow kit and add some social media to it and let them learn more about the industry. These are future farmers. You've all heard today how relevant this industry is, and that's where our passion comes from. Our food supply is fragile, our food supply system, and the more we can do about educating people and helping facilitate financing and help facilitate the whole industry, the better off we're all going to be. It's the future. So a little bit about Equipped. I mentioned that there's not really an established secondary market. So we basically have an Amazon or an eBay, if you will, that we hope that it will become of the used equipment sector, where it's relevant. People sometimes get into things that don't work out for them, or they're upgrading, and that's where we're seeing most of our suppliers and listers. And we're looking to enhance the industry, and again, the secondary market, establish that to where financing is more relevant to more lenders. I already mentioned Rooted. We're excited about teaching people and education, which is vital for the industry. Our sources of customers come from three different elements. I mentioned equipped, so we also offer financing for used equipment. Our main source of customers and financing is from our vendors that we work with. We have more than 65 vendors, including quality companies like Verde Compacto that refer us customers, and we assist them with their finance needs. And then we also have a large social media and marketing network that we're accessing and sourcing customers from all the time. I mentioned that we have a number of vendors. There are a lot of vendors in this industry, but we want to work with the best in the industry as best as we can tell. We vet all of our vendors, and we think it's important for customers to have a choice on who they want to do business with. We help publicize and promote our vendors, and again, as part of that education part of it. As far as what we finance, and by the way, we have both leasing and traditional financing available. Equipment wise, we're looking at alternative energy, automation equipment, container farms, which is relevant to this call, control systems, and the list goes on. We're seeing there's a lot of ancillary products in this industry. We're seeing projects regarding insects, hemp, mushrooms are real big right now, and we're looking at the possibility of seeing what we can do in cannabis, although that's a little complicated. We believe in a real simple process. Most people are scared to death when it comes to financing, and I know that Erica touched on this, and I don't care if it's a $20 million project or a $100,000 project. Financing's scary. It's that unknown, and many times, whether it's from purchasing a home before, or even a car, or maybe even furniture, it can be scary. We try to keep that process really simple. So on our website, Cultivatd, you can actually apply online. We love having that interaction with the customer, because there's always questions, and everything's gotten so impersonal online. So we love to have those phone calls as well, so we can answer those general questions. But we make the process simple. Typically, if we have a customer apply, and sometimes there's some supporting documentation needed, but when we have that application, we've answered those questions, we have whatever supporting documents, which is pretty simple stuff. Normally, we can get an answer within a few days. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process like you see with some of the lenders out there, whether it's an SBA loan or some of the government programs. So we try to make that process simple. We're trying to give the customers an option that is something for them to consider. If they can get better financing than what we can offer, if we can get that customer approved, great. Maybe we've helped them get to that point, and we'll go on to the next deal. But I can tell you from doing this for many years now, and from the experience that our team has, we're very proficient at it. We're very good at what we do. We're very good at helping a lot of startups, which still tends to be the majority of our customers. We'll just help you the best we can to make that process as painless as possible. I'm keeping this very high level, just time constraint wise, but basic finance parameters on the normal deal, something less than $500,000, you're looking at terms of 24 to 72 months. You're looking at rates of 6 to 15%. I know that's a wide range, but there's a wide range of deals, whether it's types of deals, startups, challenge credit startups. There's a wide range that needs to be covered. We'd rather give someone an approval, even if it's at a higher rate, than a turn down, and let them make the best decision they can. Down payments range anywhere from 0 to 50%. Again, another wide range. I would guess that the average is probably around 15%, 15. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have loans and leases available. We have some lending that actually can defer down payments and defer initial payments. There's a lag period to get your container built. So it takes some time, and whenever we can make it cash flow wise make more sense for the customer, where they can actually start growing before they have to start and make payments, we'll make that happen if we can. There's co-signers considered, there's cross-corporate guarantors considered. And I think the main tie-in here is that the big difference with us and some of the other lenders that really don't understand the industry, when you're looking to purchase and finance a container farm, that's going to be the collateral. We're not looking to take extra collateral, whether it be a second on a home or additional equipment that you might own. We're looking to keep it simple. Just to give you an idea of a sample deal, because sometimes numbers, until you actually start calculating them, but here's just one quick example. This was a container farm for approximately $150,000 that was approved. We were able to get the client an interest rate of 7%. This particular customer voluntarily decided to put a down payment of approximately $30,000 down. They probably could have done it with no money down, and their payments for a term of 60 months were in our 24.8784. That's a good rate. That's a container that was for a restaurant that was in business for a while, that was adding some uniqueness to their brand, and we were happy to be able to help them. We deal with deals, as I mentioned before, in all different sizes. We love the price point of Juan and Verde Compacto. There are a lot of much more expensive containers out there. We love dealing with different vendors, as I mentioned, because everyone's got different technology. Some of the technology for some of the crops grown, such as mushrooms, can be a little more expensive, but we love the price point of Verde Compacto. And but with that said, there's bigger projects out there where we just finalized a project for $20 million. So we're really capable at what we do when it comes to financing. We know that's an important component, just like advisory and technology is as well. And we kind of put that deal together. And I wanted one last thing I wanted to mention, because it was brought up a couple times, and especially by Erica. Business plans and having a plan, no matter what the size of your project is so important. These containers can give you a really strong return on investment, but there's variables, whether it's your location, what you're growing, and all of that. And you need to have a solid business plan. When you have a solid business plan, that makes it much easier to get you approved, because lenders realize that as well, that you've really thought this out. The numbers make sense. Seek advice, just like Erica stated. Go to good technologists, just like Juan has gone over, and the rest kind of comes together. And financing will do the best that we can for you if you utilize our services. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Doug. Very helpful, and I think it helps, wrap up the previous presentations, because it's actually now putting pen to paper, doing the math, seeing if it works. This is where you have you do your planning in place. Now you can see the vision through what Juan has outlined through Hufster. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to pulling out the spreadsheet and seeing if this is viable, and really thinking about what you're committing to, what you're getting yourself into in terms of planning, and all that lead, as you referenced, makes sense when you're doing the proper planning, because if you are going to be getting into this type of responsibility, financial responsibility, you want to know that you're doing it for a good purpose, and that you have a product that you're confident in and that you're proud of, because at the end of the day, that's going to determine your ability to stay true to your financial obligations. I'm wondering what you've seen in the various deals that Contain has worked on, Doug. Anything else that folks should be thinking about, or mistakes people make in that financial planning process?
Yeah, something that comes to mind is a lot of these are startups, which is great, because this is such a viable industry and there's lots of demand. And when there's demand, you figure out how you can make money with that demand, right? And you fill a need. But what I've seen is that sometimes people get too caught up in the demand. So I'll give you an example. Maybe somebody's had thoughts of starting with a container farm, for instance, because they have gone to their grocery store and they're hearing from the produce manager that, hey, we never can have enough produce, that we have such a need for this. And if you or somebody can provide this to us, we'll buy all that you can. Sometimes people get too excited about that. They lower their guard with doing their research, things that Erica talked about, and getting the right technology, things that Juan talked about. So there's opportunity out there, but you still have to be methodical. You still have to think it out. You still have to do your planning and make everything make sense. When you do that, this industry is just going to keep growing because it's so relevant.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. So again, I know we're running a bit long on time, so we've got a couple of questions that came in. So rather than just put them on, I'll put them out to the group one. I think that's the best way. And then if folks want to, anyone from the panel wants to address it. So the first question is the cost of electricity in crop cultivation, percentage KPI, energy prices.
Well, of course, the cost of energy depends a lot on your final location and on your energy source. But the Hufster particularly consumes 180 kilowatt per day. So that probably would be around 30 to 35% of your OPEX. So normally container farms are on the range of 200 kilowatts to 160 kilowatt per hour. I don't know if Erica has something complementary on other vendors on Cultivatd, but that's basically the expense.
Yeah, I also think it's important to think about, profitability depends on a lot of factors. So if you're thinking about lettuce production, for instance, and the electricity input for lettuce production versus strawberry production, I mean, you have more of a demand for strawberry production, but you are also going to be able to sell it at a higher margin, that product. So it's also thinking through that. And again, going back to your spreadsheet and being really honest with your potential scale of electricity costs, because I think that's one of the big challenges we're seeing right now in Europe in particular, where electricity costs have skyrocketed, and that wasn't necessarily taken into consideration in a lot of companies' projections. So accounting for how much you can stress test your own company for is really important, keeping in mind the economic factors right now that as a society we're going through. So that's always something I advise to do in your business plan, is to stress test your company for those aspects that could potentially have an impact on your business.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Second question says, I mentioned vertical farming for fruit production, such as berries. Is this possible?
Yes. Did you want to go first, Juan?
No, well, of course, technically it's possible. Again, as Erica was saying, technically in vertical farming, you can grow any type of crop because you control the environment and you can control the nutrients. But the thing here is profitability. How much yield are you going to produce compared to to the price you're going to sell to? Right now, at least from our perspective, I think also Erica can have a complementary perspective. But for example, strawberries, it can be very feasible depending on your location because of the market prices. But a lot of companies have developed the specific technology for strawberries. Other type of berries like blueberries and another type of berries. I haven't personally seen a lot of these projects because the plant its physiognomy, its form, it's more complex to put it in a vertical farm, and the yields that won't get you right now the right performance. But of course, there's a lot of technology advance and a lot of technology development to make it possible, because it's one of the hot markets here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, it can be done. It has been done. It is being done in a lot of different technological systems. The profitability of it is still questionable compared to other products, because like Juan was saying, how much, what's the yield per square footage that you're getting compared to potentially like a lettuce, where you might be able to have a higher yield per square foot, even though you might not be able to sell it as high margin. Depending on where you are, there may be more demand for it at certain seasons, all of those sorts of things. With that being said, there's a lot more research going into seed development for vertical farming for different crops, including different varieties of fruit like blueberries and those sorts of things. Right now, we're often dealing with seeds that come from traditional field farming. So using those seeds in a vertical farming system can be really challenging, because you might have a seed that has a lot more vegetation. So there's a lot of seed companies right now, genetics companies, that are working on creating cultivars and seeds genetics specific for indoor farming. And I think that is going to be a huge push for our industry in the future. We're not there right now, where we're seeing a ton of advancement in technology catered to those types of seeds. But I think as more seeds come available, specific for vertical farming, we'll really see that improve. I would say specific to strawberries, that greenhouses are still a really viable option and a really profitable way to grow fruits like strawberries.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I think it all comes down to there's a common thread in everything that's been talked about here, is like really seeing what the market is and what the profitability is for the crop that you're selecting, which I think is really important. Juan, this might be specifically for you, but or anyone wants to answer. But the question was about trends in vertical farming for Mexico and USA.
Well, I think it's very different in Mexico and the USA. The industry is in different stages. In Mexico right now, specifically, it's in a very early stage of course, with big players that are now getting into the business. We've seen a lot of interest from universities that are getting involved. We've seen a lot of interest from business people that want to diversify and enter to this industry. So, being said, the U.S. Of course is now a more mature market because in Mexico right now we are in this project development stage. To start, we already have deployed some projects, some vertical farming projects in Mexico. But we've seen an exponential interest that's being made in the last months and years, and as the days pass by, more and more interest are coming from Mexico. So that means that there's opportunity and people are starting to look for this type of solutions. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see a boom happening here. But in the US right now, differently, and I think Doug and Erica can explain better, but the US difference of Mexico is a more mature market. Of course, the industry is a new industry, but compared Mexico to the US right now, US is a more mature market. We see bigger players that with established operations. We've seen operations with container farms or giga farms that have almost 10 years operating. We've seen deals and mergers and acquisition happening. So it's in different stages, but of course, overall the industry it's definitely exploding.
Thank you.
And I'd add that I think we're probably 2 to 5 years ahead of Mexico, but we're excited to see Mexico and other areas around the world be involved in this industry. What I'm excited about is I'm seeing different business models here in the US, for instance. We're seeing restaurants and grocery stores that because of how fragile the food supply system is, they're trying to take matters in their own hands. And that's exciting for the industry. And I'm, excuse me, I'm sure those opportunities will be there in Mexico as well.
And Eric, I do want to apologize for leaving out Canada.
No, that's okay. I feel like Canada and the US are
Yeah.
probably very similar markets.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think it's also interesting what Doug said, though, about the new entry of different clientele that are coming into the space. We're seeing that a lot too. And also just lots of young entrepreneurs, not just young people, but new people to the industry that are coming in. They just hear about it and they're really excited and they see this is the future of food. I was one of those people. So I think it's always interesting to see who's coming in. And I think as our industry matures, that will also, change and evolve too.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. One last question here. This may be specifically for Juan, but the question is, do you sell the hydroponic service or structures for companies?
Well, we sell the hydroponic farms as turnkey projects. We don't only sell the equipment, as we say. We don't sell you the machine, but we work with you in the whole process, from validating your previous project before even starting, helping you shape it out. We help you install everything up, we launch it, and help you on your daily operations and supervising and backing you up. So yeah, we work with that as turnkey projects.
A couple of questions that came in from the chat. I think this might have been answered earlier, but from John Leslie, how many kilowatts of electricity is used for each kilogram harvested? How many total hours labor for each kilogram harvested? Very specific question.
Yeah, well, the kilowatts, I think we answered. This one specifically for the hopster is 180 kilowatt per day. And also labor, it's depending on the technology. There are technologies that are more automated than others. For the hopster specifically, on the farming operations, one single hopster can be operated by one person half time. and two units full time for the farming operations. You have to consider other activities as selling, distributing, and etc. But I don't know, Erica, if you guys and Doug have worked with other type of technologies with maybe higher levels of automation and labor and how that impacts on labor.
Yeah, we do work with some companies who are close to fully automated. So a really large commercial facility can be operated by one individual, for instance, where most of the growing is being done by machine. You're more so taking care of the crop once it comes out and is ready to be harvested. So there's that level of automation where you really have very low levels of labor. On the reverse side, where there's companies who are really interested in creating jobs for their communities or wherever it might be, there's a lot of systems that have a lot of who include automation to an extent where maybe, there's redundancy in seeding or harvesting tactics, for instance, they integrate some sort of automation. But as far as like packaging goes and actual crop maintenance, monitoring the crop, that's still a human being doing that work. So there's really a wide variety. It really is dependent on the technology provider. But if there's a specific interest in a different technology or a size of facility that you're looking at, we can always look into how much labor would be required.
Okay, thanks. Juan, there's a question here. I think it's in Spanish. It says, ¿podrían contar más del modelo como servicio? Which would be translated as the service model. Is that appropriate? Or
yeah. That's the right translation. Your Spanish is pretty good. As well, I'll try to say this in Spanish because I think we already said it in English. But Jorge, realmente el servicio va como un servicio llave en mano, donde les ayudamos a preparar y a validar su modelo de negocio antes de que hagan la inversión de las granjas, para ver realmente qué tan factible es para ustedes ese proyecto. Y después ya nosotros hacemos todo el trabajo de instalación y equipo, y al final les damos todo un acompañamiento para que podamos ser su brazo derecho, su soporte operativo de la granja, para desde entrenamientos agronómicos, técnicos de mantenimiento y ya soporte remoto en sus operaciones diarias. Entonces realmente nos convertimos nuestro servicio lo podemos resumir en un soporte operativo para que puedan tener un proyecto exitoso.
We'll make sure to put captions on there for people that are watching.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that. So we're getting close. I know it's we've had some folks drop off, but the great thing is that this is going to be recorded. So I think we'll wrap this up. I want to thank Erica. I want to thank Doug. I want to thank Juan for a really informative session. I think there's a lot to take away from everyone's presentations. I can just see people diving in deep and in these replays and grabbing some of these screenshots. And I think we'll coordinate with the folks that signed up and registered. Juan, I think we can get them not only the copy of the video, which will be on the socials, I imagine as well, but also for folks that want the presentations. I think that might make sense to get those linked as well so people can follow along. But thank you for allowing me to host. This is really always insightful for me, as much as I'm enjoying my time as host of the Vertical Farming Podcast, which is a small plug for that as well. If you aren't subscribed, verticalfarmingpodcast.com, so you can hear conversations like this every week on that show. So thank you again. And Juan, I'll let you wrap it up. Appreciate the opportunity.
No, thank you guys. Thank you, Erica, Doug, Harry. I think, as I said before, it's an honor to have you here. You being part of the leaders that are transforming the food system, and I think these type of sessions are very, very, very rich and very neat and very important for people to understand better how to be successful in this industry, how to maybe help them give that step forward, for example, for financing that probably can be as scary a subject as Doug was saying, and finding the right people in the space. So I really appreciate you guys, your intervention, and it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you as well. It's been great. Such a great topic and a great conversation. Thank you for having us. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We appreciate it from Contain as well, Juan. Thanks for the invitation. Harry, thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So.